Now we are moving on to our next session, Microbial Arts and Crafts workshop. And so I'd like to hand over now to our next hosts for this hour-long session. We have Elizabeth and Angelica here with us today. Hello, welcome back, Elizabeth. Hi, Angelica. How are you both doing?
Hi, everything is fine, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for asking.
So I hear you've got some very exciting things for us planned. So I'm just going to kind of disappear into the background and kind of, watch along. And if you need me for anything, just shout, I'll be here, but I'll leave the floor to you.
Okay, thank you.
So hello, everybody. As Ben just said, my name is Elizabeth, or Test Yet. I am the founder of Microbials and the co-host of the Micro Moment. And today we have an arts and crafts workshop, which is going to have 3 different little workshops in it. But first, I'll let my co-host Angelica introduce herself.
Hi. Well, first of all, I hope you are enjoying this International Microorganism Day and the program that TEMS put together. And we both want to welcome you to this Microbial Arts and Crafts session, which is going to be really cool. What we're going to show you is the result of a joint collaboration between 7 women involved in science communication. We are from different places around the world. So it was fun to put this together.
I think we're in like 3 or 4 different time zones and maybe 4 or 5 different countries.
Yeah, so it was hard.
It was hard, but it was a challenge, and it was a lot of fun to kind of get to know everybody from around the world.
Yeah, definitely. It was lots of fun. So my name is Angelica Jara-Servin. I am a PhD student at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. And you can find my work in social media profiles under the name of Pop Microbiology. And well, just to let you know who else participated in this session is Charlotte Roughton. She's a PhD student from Newcastle University in UK. And she's the owner of a project called Stitching Science that you should definitely check out. Christina Campbell, who is a freelance science communicator and a medical writer, was also involved in this. And she prepared an interesting video for us. And we have more people. Tess, would you like to tell us?
Yeah, so a big portion of what we're doing today is a BioCrust illustration and sort of info session. And so the illustration comes to us from 3 science artists. We have Eliza Wolfson, who is a freelance scientific illustrator. We have Nomi Matthew, who's at the University of Lucerne in Switzerland, and she has her own science artist business, as does Lisa Vanda Art, who is another freelance science artist. So during the video, we will have everyone's Twitter, everywhere you can find people. So if you like their artwork or anything, most of them also sell different products, so you can go check out their stuff.
Yes, exactly. So let's begin, and we're going to start with our first video recorded by Charlotte. She's going to teach us how to cross-stitch a very interesting bacteria. And while she's cross-stitching, she's going to explain us why these bacteria are important. So let's check it out.
Hi there, my name is Charlotte and I'm a microbiology PhD student at Newcastle University in the UK. Now I absolutely love my research, which focuses on the superbug Clostridioides difficile, or C. diff. But when I'm not in the lab, I really enjoy communicating science. And one of my favourite ways of doing that is through art. My favourite medium is cross-stitch, and I really enjoy making and stitching designs that communicate the science I'm passionate about in both a fun and a beautiful way. I run a small business on Etsy, Stitching Science, where I sell cross-stitch patterns for you to follow and create your own sciencey goodies, as well as completed designs. So this International Microorganism Day, I'll be telling you a little bit about C. diff, while showing you how you can cross-stitch one for yourself. Let's get started. You're going to want some fabric to stitch your design onto. There's lots of different fabrics available that are suitable for cross-stitching, each with different textures, fibre contents and colours. My personal preference is Aida, which is the most widely used for cross-stitching. It has a wide, open weave with easy to see holes that help make your cross stitches neat and consistent. Aida comes in a number of fabric counts defined by the number of holes and therefore stitches per inch. I like to use 14 count Aida, which means for each inch of fabric there will be 14 stitches. However, you may opt for a smaller fabric count if you prefer that your stitches are larger, or vice versa. Aida is readily available in a number of different fabric counts and colours, both in local craft stores and online. The next thing you'll need is a needle. For cross stitching, I like to use a tapestry needle, which is blunt. One, because you generally part the threads of the fabric rather than pierce the material as you stitch, and two, because I'm incredibly clumsy and may have spilt blood on my projects before. I really am being literal when I say blood, sweat and tears go into my work. Next up is your threads. These come in a number of different brands which have different systems of numerically categorising their thread colours. I personally use threads from the brand DMC, which are the most accessible to me in the UK, so the thread numbers provided correspond to the exact DMC colours used. However, you can just gauge it by eye and use whatever you can get your hands on. Feel free to change up the colours too, there's no strict rules here. You'll also need some scissors to trim your thread with. I like to use embroidery scissors, which are really sharp and mean you can trim your threads without them fraying. And finally, this is somewhat optional, but I recommend a hoop. Hoops help to keep your fabric taut while you stitch and are also a way of displaying your work when it's finished. However, Aida is starched, so it's fairly stiff as far as fabrics go, meaning you could get away with stitching without using a hoop. There are also alternative ways of displaying your work too, such as using photo frames. My preference though is to use a hoop, so that will be used in my tutorial, but do what works best for you. This piece frames nicely in a 3-inch hoop. Now that the materials are out of the way, let's crack on with the actual stitching. The pattern we'll be following is shown here. Feel free to take a screenshot, but a high quality PDF will also be made available for you to download. In this pattern, each stitch is represented by a symbol, with each symbol corresponding to a shade of green. It's up to you where you decide to start. Some stitchers like to start in the centre, which is indicated by the intersection of the red lines, though I usually start at an edge and work my way in. I'm going to begin with the body of the cells, represented by the fan symbol. I like to take 2 strands of thread, fold these over and then thread the needle. This means that each stitch will consist of 4 strands in total, which I prefer for a fuller effect, but you can opt for different strand numbers depending on the finish you prefer. The more strands you use, the less of the Aida colour you can see peeking through. I think 4 strands is a nice compromise between getting a nice full colour while avoiding the appearance of overcrowding. Once your needle is threaded, you want to make a start on your first stitch, like so. Push the needle through the holes of the Aida at your starting point, and then push back through the diagonal hole. Remember I told you to fold the threads over before threading your needle. Now, pull the needle and thread through the loop created to secure your thread. Next, push the needle back through the holes on the opposite side and create another diagonal stitch. And ta-da! That's your first cross stitch. Now you just need to follow along with the pattern, with each symbol corresponding to 1 cross stitch. You may want to print the pattern out and cross the symbols out with pencil as you complete them, to help you keep track of your progress. This pattern also includes some 3/4 stitches to give the cells a rounded shape. To do these, instead of poking the needle through the corner of the cross, bring it up through the centre. Using a sharper needle can help with this, and then bring it back down through the corner. Then cross the thread diagonally. This creates a triangular 3/4 stitch shape rather than the square full stitch. When you reach the end of your thread, to ensure your hard work doesn't unravel, slide your needle underneath the back of a few of your stitches and pull the thread through. Snip the excess and you're ready to start with your next thread. As I continue to stitch, let me tell you some more about C. diff and why we should care about it. C. diff is a bacterial pathogen, meaning it causes disease. In this case, C. difficile infection or CDI. CDI usually occurs when a healthy population of gut microbes has been compromised in some way, for example after taking antibiotics. While antibiotics are fantastic for treating bacterial infections, they're not specific to the bad guys. Unfortunately, our beneficial gut microbes are also killed by the drugs we take to cure infections. This is a problem, as it leaves an ideal home for less desirable microbes to move in, such as C. diff. Without a robust population of gut bacteria on hand to outcompete C. diff and fend it off, it moves in and makes itself comfortable. It starts to replicate and produces toxins which damage the gut and cause the symptoms of CDI, which include diarrhea and even holes in the gut in severe cases. Unfortunately, the current treatments available to tackle CDI are more antibiotics, which comes with caveats. By continuing to use antibiotics, more good gut bacteria continue to also be killed off as a result, creating a vicious cycle that maintains an ideal environment for C. diff to just come back once the antibiotics are stopped. In fact, around 20% of infections recur in the first instance, and this chance of recurrence increases with each subsequent infection. So it's crucial that we find new ways of tackling this bug, methods that don't also target the gut bacteria we want to keep around. Another characteristic of C. diff that makes it so tricky to deal with is its ability to form spores. Spores are dormant forms of C. diff. Think Sleeping Beauty, except when this beauty wakes up, you're in for diarrhea and a pretty bad time. Though spores don't do much, in this form they have several protective layers and are incredibly resistant to common disinfectants, heat and radiation. This allows C. diff to hang around in the environment and can spread to others if they, for example, touch a surface containing spores and then their mouths. If this happens to a person who doesn't have a healthy population of gut microbes, then the spores can wake up in the gut and then cause an infection. However, despite the important role spores play in the transmission of CDI, the mechanisms of spore formation are not yet fully understood, nor do current treatment options target this feature. Researchers like myself are working towards better understanding this process, and maybe in the future this information could be used to develop new drugs that can target C. diff specific features, preventing it from returning and spreading to others, but without hurting the good bacteria. It's a super exciting avenue of research, I hope you agree. And now, back to the cross-stitching. Now that the bodies of the cells are finished, it's time to outline them. To do this, a back stitch will be used. For this, I like to use 2 strands, so this time take 1 strand of thread, fold over and thread your needle as you already have done. You may want to use a sharper needle for this step, as back stitching can sometimes require you to pierce the ader. Start wherever you'd like along the outline of the cells and stab the needle through the fabric. Pull it back through about a stitch length away and make sure to thread the needle through the loop created to ensure it doesn't unravel. Next, push the needle back through the fabric a stitch length away and then take it down to the end of the previous stitch and pull through. Then repeat until all the cells have been outlined. After you've finished the back stitching, the piece is complete. Yay! To tidy up the back, you can just trim the excess ader, or to minimise fraying, you can run some stitches around the outside of the excess ader, then pull the fabric together like a drawstring bag. If you decide to follow this tutorial, I hope you enjoyed learning how to stitch this deceptively cute design. If not, I hope you enjoyed watching nonetheless and learned something new. You can find me on social media at CG Roughton on Twitter or at Stitching Science on Instagram. Feel free to come say hello, and if you decide to have a go with this pattern, let me know how you get on. I hope you enjoy the rest of International Microorganism Day.
Okay, so we hope you enjoyed Charlotte's video and you're willing to take a chance and try to cross stitch your own Clostridium difficile at home.